Welcome to the Rich, Young, and Powerful podcast. This is the place where we help average givers become everyday philanthropists. I'm your host, Andrew McNair, a financial commentator, author, nine-figure wealth manager, and philanthropist too. I'm going to show you how to give more, how to find more fulfillment, and help you impact the causes that you care about the most. Because when a giver gives more, they receive and they become more. And today I have the honor of bringing on our special guest for today's show, Hall of Fame, Super Bowl MVP, retired NFL player, and the inspiration behind the recent movie, American Underdog. Kurt Warner, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you having me on.
Well, I always like to start with this question many times, especially for those who are not football fans. I want them who haven't watched the movie, they need to watch the movie, but can you kind of share with us your story by answering this question? Do you think you rose to the moment, or did the moment really arise at the perfect time?
So my story, obviously, grew up in the state of Iowa, didn't have a whole lot, and so gravitated to sports at a very early age. And so, my dream from, the time I was in third or fourth grade, I remember having the project from, one of my teachers, we're going to do a little paper on what you want to be when you grow up, right? And you have, everything across the board within the class. But for me, I was going to be a professional athlete. It didn't really matter to me what sport. I played every sport growing up, but that was the thing. When you don't have a whole lot, it's kind of easy to gravitate to sports. All I needed was a football or a basketball, and I could go out and spend hours kind of getting better at that craft. But grew up dreaming of playing in the NFL, and we'll fast forward a little bit to college, and the story that a number of people know, that I ended up sitting on the bench for 4 years in college, struggling to get my opportunity to play. I would ultimately get cut. My first opportunity in the NFL, be working in a grocery store, find myself playing anywhere and everywhere I could playing arena football, playing in Europe. You're just trying to present myself an opportunity to maybe get back into the NFL. And then, when I was 27 years old, got the opportunity to make the team with the St. Louis Rams. Got my first start in the NFL when I was 28, which is ancient in terms of a rookie quarterback getting an opportunity. But got my first start when I was 28, and was able to have great success and parlay that into 3 opportunities to play in the Super Bowl, and and a Hall of Fame bust in Canton. And so it's been kind of a crazy, wacky, one-of-a-kind journey. But it's been so fun, and so much along the way, Andrew. There was so much of my journey that I just said, I don't want this journey. I want somebody else's journey. Why me? Why do I have to go through this? And it's incredible when we find ourselves on the other side, how we look back and we've learned from so many of those aspects, and we become better people. I became a better player through those different opportunities. And I truly believe the only reason I had success when I did was because of some of the things that I went through and the things that I learned along the way. And so I am so grateful for my journey now. I mean, you mentioned the movie. I mean, how many people get a chance to get a movie made about them? And what you realize about movies being made, I've got 7 kids, Andrew, so we jump right into that as well. I kind of skipped over that in the football journey, but I've got 7 kids, and
wow.
My youngest son, I remember he grew up in that time period when Nike had all those different slogans, sports slogans on the T-shirts and everything. And one time we were going to a basketball game, and he had a shirt on that said, "One day they'll make a movie about me." And I remember looking at it as kind of a learning moment and going, "Okay, EJ, why are they going to make a movie about you?" And he wanted to be an athlete like I did, and so of course his first answer was, because I'm going to be really good at whatever sport, basketball, football. Right. I'm going to be really good at sports, so they're going to make a movie about me. And I shared with him, the thing is there's a lot of guys, and I shouldn't say just guys. There's a lot of guys, gals, women, men that are great at their profession, that are great at their job, that are great athletes. They don't make movies about all of them. They make movies about people that do it differently, that have different journeys and different stories that people can associate with. And so I remember, kind of sharing that with him at a young age. And ironically, I believe that's the reason that they made this movie about me, was because my journey connects with a lot of people, because real life is much more about finding yourself on the bench at times, having your supermarket moment, trying to figure out your way to that mountaintop that you're chasing after, as opposed to kind of just being set there from the get-go. So it's been an incredible journey, one that at times I didn't want, but now that I'm extremely grateful for.
Well, I'm just curious, and I understand. I mean, listening to you and then the movie, I can understand why to be so grateful. I mean, you have a beautiful family, but those times in the valleys is what I want to focus on. How do you build that resiliency that when it doesn't look like someone's making a movie after your life? I mean, when you are stocking shelves, I mean, how do you build that kind of habit of resiliency for the person that's listening?
I think there was really two facets for me. And the first facet was, I always thought it was important to have a realistic viewpoint of who I was. And, it was important on both sides, that when things were tough, when I was sitting on the bench, when I was working in a grocery store, I felt I was very realistic about who I was as a player, whether I was good enough, if given the opportunity to be successful at the highest level. And I never lost sight of that. We always say in our family, never let your circumstances define you. And I think so often it's easy to look at where you're at. Oh, I'm on the bench, I must not be very good. Oh, I'm working in a grocery store, I must not be very good. And sometimes we just have circumstances that are thrust on us that don't define who we are, and it isn't necessarily a direct reflection of, us being there is because we aren't good enough, or because we can't accomplish anything, or that we don't have the skills to be really good. And so I think that was the first component, is that the resiliency came from the fact that I was very confident in who I was, what I was capable of. I think I was realistic with what I believed about myself. I didn't have this dream that I was really good and I wasn't very good. I mean, I think I was really realistic with that. So I was able to hold my confidence even when the situations kind of said, well, you probably shouldn't be confident now. You shouldn't really believe now because you're not having success. But I was very confident in it. And then the second part of the resiliency and being, kind of being realistic with life was to also understand that I wasn't a finished product. So although I was confident in my skills, I also was able to recognize and understand in different situations that there was some things missing. There were things that I needed to do better. There was things that I needed to improve on so that I could reach my ultimate goal. And I think both of those things were catalysts to get me there. That if I had lost the confidence at some point, I probably would have just given up, like a lot of people give up when they're faced with those circumstances, and would never had a chance to see what I was capable of. And then on the other side, if I just continue to point fingers at everybody else and go, well, the coach must not like me, that's why I'm not playing, or people can't recognize my skills, that's why I'm working in a grocery store, as opposed to looking in the mirror and reflecting and going, okay, what is the problem? Why am I not having the success, or why am I not on the field? I think a great story, Andrew, for me was when I was in college sitting on the bench. I thought I was the most talented guy. And, I think we often find ourselves in those situations where we compare ourselves to everyone else and go, I think I'm better than they are. Why am I not getting the chance? And I remember asking a friend of mine to go and ask the coaches what I was missing. Like, why do I think I should be playing, yet here I find myself sitting on the bench again? And I'll never forget his response when he came back down to talk to me. And he said, the coaches said you're not playing because you're not very good in practice. And, my first response was, kind of like the old Allen Iverson rant, if you've ever seen it, kind of like, practice? Like, we're talking about practice, not games, not the big moments, not when the lights are on. We're talking about practice. Really? Because when I've got my opportunity in the bigger moments and under the lights, I've been really, really good. But you're telling me I'm not playing because I'm not very good in practice. So I kind of walked away kind of frustrated again, kind of, that's just an excuse not to play me for some other reason. But the more I got to thinking about it, the more I got to thinking, man, in college we played, 12 games in a season. In the NFL, we played 16 games in a season. So basically I was under the lights 12 days out of the year, or 16 days out of the year. And I realized 95% of life is lived in practice. The impact that we have on other people, the impression that we leave on other people is how we live every day, how we show up every day. And these coaches were saying, we don't know if we can trust you under the lights because we don't see that same guy from Monday through Friday. We don't see that same guy every day in practice. And so, that was kind of a message to me when I was going through some of these tough times, was to not always just look exteriorly and say, okay, why, isn't somebody giving me a chance, but to look internally and go, all right, what am I missing? What am I not doing? What am I not showing someone? If I think I'm capable of doing this, what am I not doing right to let everybody else know that I'm capable of this and get the opportunities that I felt like, from an athletic standpoint, that I probably deserved?
I mean, you're spot on. And there's just no growth there in just blaming others, coaches, for our results. There's never any growth there. Sometimes it is uncomfortable to look in the mirror. But I love this. Focusing on those 12 days is where a lot of people's focus is when the lights are on. But then you hear stories like Steph Curry, who's, throwing hundreds of, free throws before practice and before even practice begins, that no one's going to see that, because he's ready for game day when it finally is on. So that's great.
You're so right. I mean, I think that's so much of just reading different quotes from other great people, and often saying, I was really made when the lights were off, when nobody was there, when nobody was there to cheer me on or to boo me. That's when I was really made. And I feel there's so much truth to that, is being able to internalize things and be able to learn in those moments.
Is there something you could encourage someone, though, that they feel like they're working on themselves, but they're just in a time of waiting? Maybe it's a time of infertility. Maybe it's a time for a business venture that just hasn't turned out yet the way they wanted it to. Maybe someone's about to go on a mission trip. They're looking for a spouse if they're single. Anything that you would recommend, because you do know a lot about waiting till age 28, 4 years on the bench. Any final words about waiting?
It's interesting that you say waiting, and I feel like when you use the word waiting, that for most people, they look at it like, oh, I'm just kicking back in my chair and I'm just going to sit here and not do anything, and I'm just waiting. Like, okay, when is that perfect opportunity going to be dropped in my lap, or when is that perfect person going to just walk by my path, and then we're going to run off and get married and live this incredible life and have this incredible marriage? I think for me, there was always a waiting on when is the opportunity going to come. But during the waiting, I was always working. And so, just like we were always talking, I was working on myself. I was trying to get better. I was trying to improve my craft. I was trying to change my mindset in a lot of different situations. So just like I was talking about with the practice, oh man, I want to change that mindset so that I can become that kind of practice player in everything. Because, you mentioned, finding that spouse. Yeah, I remember thinking, okay, when I was growing up, okay, when I get married, the key is going to be to get the big moments right. To make sure that you never forget the anniversaries. Make sure I have good gifts, when it's birthday time or when that's how I'm going to make my mark as a husband. And I came to realize very quickly in marriage that, those moments are great. And my wife loves those moments, but she wants to know what kind of practice player I am. She wants to know what I'm going to do every day, how I'm going to show up, how I'm going to love her on a daily basis, even when we have arguments, and so on and so forth. And, the same thing with my kids. I thought the same thing. I'll be there for, the father-daughter dances, and make sure you're there for the big moments where you have to, get that lecture right, where you give that life lesson to your kids. And I've realized the exact same thing. My kids just want to know, who are you going to be every day, Dad? How are you going to love me every day? Good, bad, indifferent. How are you going to love my mom? How are you going to love your wife? How are you going to go about your job? They want to see who I am in practice every day. And so while on the outside it appeared oftentimes like I was waiting for something, I wasn't stagnant in my waiting. My waiting was always trying to improve who I was, whether that be on the field or off the field. Challenging my character, challenging my mindset, working towards a life of excellence. So when those opportunities came, whether it was a great business opportunity, man, I was ready and I was prepared, and I had this mindset that I was going to be excellent with that. Whether it was my spouse, when I ran into Brenda, as you've seen the movie, when we ran into each other on a dance floor in a country music bar. And she had been divorced. She had 2 kids. We were in different places in life. I had to be ready for that. Like, for the maturity to be able to handle her situation because it was different than mine, and show her that I could handle that if we were going to stay together and make a life together. And so, so much of that waiting, so to speak, was me trying to hone my skills and trying to get better and using whatever circumstance I was in at the time to improve on those other things. And so I think that was the biggest thing for me, is I always had, when you talk about waiting, I always had, that mindset and that vision of what I was waiting for and how I was still working towards it. But that was a waiting in motion, where I felt like I was getting closer and closer. Not necessarily that I was getting closer to the woman that would be my wife, but I was getting closer and closer to being the husband that woman would deserve when I finally found her. Football wise, I was getting better and better as a quarterback. So when that opportunity came, I was ready to seize it and take advantage of it. I got my first start in the NFL when I was 28 years old. And that same year, I was able to win the MVP and win the Super Bowl that year. And so that kind of speaking to the point is that while I was waiting, I was growing and I was moving and I was getting closer to who I wanted to be. So when that waiting period was over, I was ready to hit the ground running.
Well, someone needed to hear that. Waiting in motion. Waiting is not passive. I do want to transition to your story of faith and your testimony. Who was it in your life, Kurt, that helped lead you to God?
Well, I grew up in the church. I grew up in the Catholic Church, went to Catholic school, all growing up through high school. And so I had a, Christian, Catholic, faith-based background. So knew of the Bible. Obviously, I knew of Jesus. I knew the stories that were in there. Went to church, did all of those different things. But growing up, my relationship was very much kind of what other people had told me it was going to be, or, following my mom because she'd make us go to church every Sunday. And I went, and, it wasn't as if I didn't believe in what I was being taught. But it was never really internalized when I was growing up. It was learning it. It gave me a great background. It gave me a great understanding. But it wouldn't be until later on in life where it would really be internalized in terms of understanding what that faith meant and how that faith was going to lead me and guide me. And maybe more importantly, what God's role in my life was. Very much growing up, I felt God's role was kind of my spare tire. That he was in the back, he was in the trunk, and as long as everything was going smooth, I checked the boxes of going to church and doing my religion class homework and all of that stuff. But it wasn't until something went wrong and I got a flat tire and that I would pull him out and then kind of get, God, okay, I need your help with this. I need you to get me from here to there and help me with that and, make whatever commitment I was going to make to God. Well, if you do this, I'll do this, all that sort of stuff growing up. So that was kind of my relationship growing up. And it wasn't until my mid-20s, I actually met, Brenda, who would become my wife. I was playing arena football at the time. I had a couple teammates on, that arena team that were Christian guys that started a Bible study. And it was during that period where both of those were coinciding. And, I found them kind of asking me the same questions, asking me why I believed what I believed and where in the Bible it says, certain things that had become kind of a part of what my faith was all about and, what God's purpose in my life was, or maybe more importantly, what my purpose in life was. And through asking me those questions and really more challenging me in those things, right? I'm a competitor at heart. I'm a competitor, by nature. And so they would competitively kind of challenge me in what I believed and what my faith was. And it was during that time that I really kind of dove into the Bible, at a new depth, started asking those questions, started diving in a little bit deeper. And it was through kind of that time period and those questions and those individuals that I came to realize that I was missing so much of what faith was all about. That it wasn't about God being here for me and doing what I wanted him to do so life could be easy. It was more about what was my role in his big picture. What was my purpose, in this grand thing that he had laid out And so my mindset shifted at that time to go, okay, God, how do you want to use me? So much of my journey, trying to get to the NFL and do all that was just about me. I want to get there. I want to show people that I can do it. I want people to have my name on the back of their jersey, all of that stuff. And then, after going through that, it became, okay, God, I want to make it because I want to be able to be a light for you. And I want to be able to share this journey and share what you taught me and the person that you've made me into through this journey. And so it was at that time where it really internalized. And I came to realize that I'm here for him. He's not just here for me, to make my dreams come true. And that was when I stepped into faith in a different way. Now, I will say, Andrew, my faith continues to evolve. It's always brand new, as we have different challenges and different things that go on in society, and society evolves and changes. I'm constantly asking myself, okay, what would Jesus do? What if he was living here? What would his life look like? How am I supposed to represent that with all the different things that are going on and all the tensions that we have in the world now? And so I'm not a finished product by any means. I'm always trying to evolve, but I'm always trying to live in love. I always come back to the fact that if there's one thing that I believe God has called us to, it's to love people. And if there's one thing that Jesus represented to us in every facet, it's to love people, no matter where they're at, no matter where they find themselves, no matter what challenges they have, no matter how different they are from us, is to love them. And that is our job and that is our role. And so that has been, for me, really my faith journey, since that point where I really internalized it was, how do I show and represent God's love to people in each and every situation I come in contact with? And how do I manage all this stuff that we might call religion, in the world that we have, with who I believe Jesus was and what he's called me to be?
So much to unpack there. I mean, I think you're spot on. I think love builds the bridge to those who are not of the same belief as us, who doesn't, maybe not raised the same way we were, has a different demographic, different race. And that's what love should be exemplified by the Christian. But I want you to speak to the person that claims to be a Christ follower, the brother or sister in Christ, who's maybe hiding in football, hiding literally in a fantasy, and choosing a fantasy team versus a Bible study like you spent time prioritizing. What would you say to that brother or sister who's prioritizing, and there's no one that loves football more than you, is prioritizing a game, a sport, more than fellowship with the body?
Yeah, I think there's all kinds of challenges, with the idea of, how exactly we build our relationship with God. Because I believe there's a million different ways to build our relationship with God. And I think there's, a lot of times that we say, well, okay, if you're a faithful person, then you have to go to church on Sundays and you should be a part of a Bible study. And maybe you're praying every single day for a certain amount of time and you're doing all of this, which again, I think all of those have tremendous value and all of those are key components for a lot of people that I know that have deep faiths. And so, I don't think there's anything that we can do that directly connects us to God that is a negative in any way. But I think what I've kind of realized in life is that we're all going to have to find balance, right? We're all going to have to figure out, okay, there's no way if I've got to work for a living and work 8 hours a day, that I'm going to be able to spend 8 hours a day focused on my faith, so to speak, like in a Bible study or going to church or praying. Like there's no balance from that perspective of being able to figure out the time nuance of this faith. And so for me, what my faith has become about over the years is that I'm always trying to be conscious of recognizing God in everything. And so, whether it's me going to a movie, it's trying to hear the message, it's trying to listen to the story. And I love true life stories too, is what God's trying to share with me in that moment. Whether it's in a relationship, even if I'm just going out to lunch with a friend, it's how God's showing up in that moment or in that time, how God's showing up in my marriage, in the way that I parent my kids, when I go to my job and the people that surround me in my job. And so what I'm trying to say, Andrew, is I'm trying to make myself conscious of God in everything. So I'm not looking at it as if, okay, the 15 minutes that I spend, praying, and then 15 minutes focusing on my fantasy football team. Well, this one always is going to have more value than that one. I think there's value in everything. That, maybe my fantasy football aspect is me joining with my group. And so it's not a Bible study group where we're talking about the Bible and we're talking about Jesus, but it's our fellowship of connecting. And it's my way to impact people or be impacted by other people, even though we're talking about something that appears to be, so far from a faith-related, interaction as possible. I don't look at it like that. I look at every interaction and every situation as a chance for God to speak to me and possibly to speak through me and to use me and to grow me in my faith. And so, I say all that because I think there's value in so many different things. But to me, the greatest value is recognizing God in our lives and recognizing God in our lives as much as we possibly can, no matter where we're at and no matter what we're doing. And that to me is how I've gone about trying to manage all of this, because I don't think there's a perfect balance. But I also don't think, if you miss church or you miss Bible study or you're not a part of a Bible study, that you can't be connected to God and you can't feel God and you can't learn and grow in your faith when you don't have those things. Tremendous value in different aspects. Again, I've benefited from all of those different things. But I also benefit, and I believe other people have benefited from me in things that you would look at and say, this has nothing to do with faith. This has nothing to do with Christianity or Jesus or anything like that. And I've grown tremendously in those things. Yeah, I'm share an example. I know I'm talking a lot here, Andrew, but I was on Dancing with the Stars. And, so I did that event on Dancing with the Stars. And you probably can't imagine the letters I got doing that show. And most of them from Christian people saying, how could you possibly do a show like this? How could you possibly do a show where you're out there dancing, with someone in maybe some sexualized form as some people see it, and it's not your wife, and dishonor that and dishonor your faith and all of those things. And I remember looking at it and going, man, to me, I believe I was called to the world, as I think all of us are. So it's, how do we represent Jesus to the world in worldly endeavors, in things that people see as not having any kind of representative of faith? How do we represent Jesus in those things? Because most of our lives are going to be in those areas. That's where we're going to live. And so I remember when I specifically went into doing Dancing with the Stars, that was on the forefront of my mind, was how do I honor God in doing this show? How do I honor my marriage in doing this show? How do I show people that even in the midst of something like this, that everybody sees as being a worldly show, I can still represent and demonstrate love and demonstrate the love I have, for my family and my wife, and represent my Savior and my Lord and my faith in an upstanding way. And I got all those letters early on. And I would say that I probably got just as many letters when it was over from the same sort of people. I don't know if they were the exact same people saying, well done. We didn't think that you could do it. We didn't think that you could do something like that and honor who you are and stay the person of character that you are. And I guess in the big picture, represent your faith the way that you did in a setting like that. And so, again, just one example for me of realizing through life is that my goal is to find God in everything, or to represent God in everything, or to recognizing him in each and every aspect of my life, not just feeling like I can cater every part of my life around things that we say are more faith-based or more Christian-oriented. I want my whole life to be centered around that. I want to live in a way that I represent that no matter where I'm at, whether I'm, in church or whether I'm, dancing, with someone that's not my wife on, a huge platform on national TV. I want to represent the same things. I want to be the same person, and I want people to be able to be impacted and influenced, because you know it, Andrew, there's going to be millions of people that see me on Dancing with the Stars that I'll never get a chance to talk to in person, or I'll never get a chance to see in church. this is my way of being able to represent my, my faith and my God to them in all these ways that, that we may say doesn't look like it's a faith-based endeavor, or that you're doing it for that reason. I think if we have that on our mind, each and every interaction we can have in life can be a way to represent who we are from a faith perspective.
I love it. I definitely want to tie it back to the whole point of why I started this podcast. Is it's a rich, young, and powerful. So the rich young ruler had power. He had ruling abilities. Rich young ruler, and so Jesus was calling him to be influential in a different way, to go into the world, to sell everything and give it to the poor, and then follow him and be a disciple that would change the world, and to not hide his light under a bushel, not to be a Pharisee, just having, these get-togethers with all these other believers and then pushing aside all of these other non-believers and say, look at all those Gentiles. Instead, he called out people like Paul that said, I'm calling you out of being a Pharisee and actually sending you out into the world to be that salt and light that the world needs to see. And so I think that's exactly what the church needs to be emboldened to, is to go into your secular community, go into your secular job and speak Jesus all the time wherever you go. And you can be bold about that. And when someone like yourself that has influence and then actually goes out and shares their faith on these secular platforms, it gives other people that boldness. That light starts to light everyone else's candle when it's been snuffed out, or they were afraid to being snuffed out. So I'm appreciative of you and your faith. I do want to switch to generosity and talk about your stewardship story. They say that NFL stands for not for long, and I understand really honestly why many athletes, a lot of people say, isn't that funny how they just blew all their money? I'm like, no, it's not. I mean, it's understandable. I mean, many athletes have this short outlook that they're not going to be that long. They might as well spend and enjoy the time while they're there. But how did you decide to create maybe a habit of generosity and stay true to who you were?
Well, I will say, one of the benefits that I feel I got, because I didn't get into the NFL until a little later, is that I was much more grounded in who I was. I was married at the time, had a couple kids at the time, and so I was able to have a different perspective, which I value greatly now. So many things that I learned, and I was in such a different place when I finally made it, that I'm grateful for that, because I was much more mature and understanding of who I was and what I wanted to accomplish. So I'm very fortunate, because you're right. So many of these young individuals fall into money that they've never had before. They've never come from that environment. They don't really understand how to take care of it. They don't have people around them they can trust to invest it and to do the right things with it. And as you said, they feel like it's going to last forever. When you fall into money at 21, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm only 21. I'm going to do this forever. I'm going to have all. And then all of a sudden, as you said, not for long, something happens, you suffer an injury, all of a sudden, that's all gone. And you're like, oh my gosh, what did I just do? And so, for me, it was really, as you mentioned, being a good steward of what I was given. And, that was making sure that I was charitable and I was impacting the lives of other people that weren't as fortunate as I was. I was being able to feed back into those people that were feeding to me, those pastors, those churches that were feeding me and giving me direction. And then I looked at it as if, this money and platform that I'd been given, that it was given to me by God to be smart with it, to make sure that I represented it the right way and used it to impact people. And so having that mindset from the get-go, I was very smart in, I'm not a guy that likes stuff. I don't have that one big vice like, oh, I love cars, so I got to go out and buy cars, or I like electronics, or I didn't have any of that stuff. Why
you
that
couldn't
was
when you were stocking shelves.
Well, no, I mean, yeah, I couldn't for a long time. But when I came into money, I don't know if it was just because of my background. I don't know if it was directly related to my faith, whatever it was, I didn't have any of those vices. So I was fortunate from that standpoint. But my life really became, focused on making sure that I can take care of those closest to me, take care of my family, and prepare for the future and what that meant, having 7 kids and, college or helping them to be able to be successful. But then always looking for opportunities in which I could give back and impact other people. You mentioned it at very early in the show is the joy in giving back, the joy in giving to others and what that does for us individually. And I don't think you can fully understand that until you actually give, and how many times it was hard to, whether it was write that check or go do, one of these charitable, events where you're there, you're going and you're tired and you don't want to go. And you're like, gosh, why do I do this? Why did I commit to this? And then you go and you're like, I need to be doing more of that. Like it changes your life dramatically. And so when you start to realize that from a generosity standpoint, that how much giving feeds us and how much it gives to us and how excited I am about life when I give. And, and a big reason why I continue to work and do things and try to continue to build my platform is not so my platform can be bigger and more people can see me, so to speak, or I can make more money so I can buy another car or what. It's being able to expand the platform so I can continue to have reach and impact on other people that are out there. And so I think when you get a mindset that's like that, and you understand the power in generosity and the power in giving, you never want to stop. You look forward to the next opportunity to give to someone. And that's the kind of life I want to live. I want to live a life that's all about giving. I want my legacy at the end of the day to be about what I gave, not what I had. That to me is really what it's all about and what I continue to search for. And that's everywhere. It doesn't have to be always outside. I want my wife to say that, it was like our marriage was about what he gave me, not what he had or what he took. I want my kids to say the same thing. I want my teammates to say the same things. And, and you hope you can have some sort of impact on whatever small piece of the world where they say that exact same thing about you.
Well, I can hear it in your voice. It's contagious, being a cheerful giver. And I'd love for others to learn a bit more about the First Things First Foundation as well as Treasure House.
So the First Things First Foundation. So I'll take this back to when I was in 7th grade. I remember I was playing football and had the dream of playing football, as I mentioned before. And I had a volunteer coach that came to coach our team. And this coach had a short stint in the NFL. So he was what I wanted to be. He had that glimpse, on the big stage at the highest level. And here he was coming and giving back to our team and coming to coach this group of 7th grade kids. And I always, that sunk in my mind like, wow, the impact that he had on me, just showing up every day going, okay, how would he do it? What's he going to teach us? What can I learn from him today that's going to help me? And what that did for me, knowing that he was willing, to take everything that he had and give it and feed back in to my life. And it made such an impression upon me that I remember thinking, okay, when I make it, I'm going to make sure that I do the same sort of things that this coach did. I want to make sure that I'm giving back. And that person that fed into me that I have, and I'm going to try to feed into other people in a similar fashion. So that's where it really started for me when I was growing up. So when I finally did make it, with the Rams, later on in life, one of the first things I wanted to do was start a foundation. And so the foundation we started was the First Things First Foundation. And it's what I kind of call my player foundation. So that was the foundation I started when I was playing. And it was about finding different ways to connect to the community. And for me, there's so many great organizations out there. There's so many great charities out there that do great things. There's so many great players, that have their own foundations that are focused on certain areas. So what I realized is, okay, I just got to figure out what my niche is. What is our niche? What do we want to do? And so much of the First Things First Foundation has been based off of experiences my wife and I have had. So our oldest son suffered a traumatic brain injury when he was 4 months old. And so he was fighting for his life at the time. We understand the struggles she spent, days and days, in the ICU, wondering, what life was going to be like, and what, what her life was going to be like if Zach made it, and would he make it from a day-to-day basis, and those sorts of things. So when we started our foundation, one of the first things we did was made hospital visits, and sat down with parents and sat down with the young men and women that were in those hospital beds, just because we could, to some degree, recognize and understand what that felt like. That would turn into,
you could relate.
Yeah, exactly. When I won the Super Bowl MVP, growing up, I always wanted to be in the Disney commercial, right? What are you doing next? I'm going to Disney World. So that was on the bucket list, to be successful and do that. But, I was able to be a part of that commercial when I won my Super Bowl, and it led to a relationship with Disney. And so every year for the past, I don't even know what it is now, 22, 23 years, we've partnered with Disney, and we've partnered with Make-A-Wish, and we take Make-A-Wish families to Disney with us for a week every single year. And it is one of our greatest weeks of the year. Every one of my kids come. My kids started just being a part of the group. Now they're serving. Each one of them gets a family every year, and their job is to take care of the family that they're with and build relationships and make it easier on the parents. And so, those experiences that we went through and those challenges that we went through, we've turned it into a program to try to at least ease the burden a little bit and build relationships with some new families every year, and give them something that I know as they're going through their challenges, they think, okay, we're never going to have the opportunity to do that. We work with Habitat for Humanity to work on giving away a home. And I won't say necessarily giving it away, because Habitat has a great program of making sure that the families are invested in it. We work with our sponsors to fill up these homes. So when these single parents, because my wife was a single parent after she had gotten divorced, and we fought to find and to obtain home ownership for the first time. I remember when we got our first home, we had nothing to put in it. So the four of us slept with a few blankets in the living room, on the floor.
And that's in the movie. I mean, you talk about moving out of the in-laws' house. So you talk about that.
Just trying to figure out how we're going to make ends meet. But, there's such a sense of pride and accomplishment in getting our first home. So now we have a program we call Homes for the Holidays. We adopted it from Warwick Dunn, who is another great player that's done some incredible things. And it's about helping single parents obtain home ownership through the help of our sponsors, through the help of Habitat for Humanity, and giving them kind of a push forward into the next phase of their life. So much of First Things First has really been about those kind of community projects that we do, or programs that we do, that we feel we can directly connect with those families and those people, that those programs are about. And then Treasure House has become our latest passion, and it is a community living facility for young adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So I already mentioned our oldest son, Zach, who suffered the traumatic brain injury. He was kind of the inspiration behind Treasure House. He has accomplished so many different things, being told at 4 months he'd be lucky to live, and if he lived, he'd be lucky to sit up. And now he's got 2 jobs, and he's very functional, although, can't be completely independent. So we created Treasure House as a way for him to have as much independence as he can while having the supervision that he needs, and also creating a community for Zach and for those like him and for families like ours to be able to have dreams of being able to live in their purpose and, have community and have a social life and have a purpose and being able to chase after jobs and accomplishments and all the things that we all need in our lives to be successful and to be happy. And so we've created our first treasure house here in Arizona, which is where we live. Our goal is to build treasure houses across the country and hopefully one day across the globe to be able to impact that intellectual and developmental disability community that is a part of every one of our communities, a part of the world that we live in. Oftentimes, those families and those individuals are kind of the forgotten piece in our communities because most families, okay, they just live at home and and everything that they do is kind of catered to with their parents and their siblings. And we didn't want that to be life for these families. And we didn't want that to be life for these young men and women that have so many abilities. When we focus too much on the disabilities, we wanted to focus on the abilities and give them a chance to live in those things. And so it is a thriving community. It is completely full right now. We've got a wait list, which just lets us know that we're doing the right work, but we've got a lot of work to do. We got a lot of room to grow and a lot of families to be able to touch. But that has become our newest passion. So I'll just throw it out here. If anybody listening is interested in finding out more or being a part of it, you can go to kurtwarner.org to find out what we're doing at First Things First. You can go to treasurehouse.org to find out what we're doing at Treasure House. And we're looking for people that get it, are like-minded, and want to come along with us for the ride.
Well, I think it's amazing. And there's so much that, someone should understand that you went to the need that y'all understood and that Brenda has lived with even before even meeting you. And I think that's what's so special is a lot of people are looking for passions and they're looking for charities. And it's like, well, who could you help that was once maybe in a situation or a bind that you were, and maybe they haven't got out of that bind yet, that you can speak love, truth, and help them and give them aid to get back on their feet. And so I think even with both organizations, you're doing just that, and I think that's really powerful. I took that away, and just I appreciate you sharing about that. So they can go to the website one more time. How to give?
Go to kurtwarner.org. That'll take them to our First Things First Foundation, and then go to treasurehouse.org to find out what we're doing with Treasure House. Moving forward. So I appreciate anybody that takes a look, and if nothing else, just pray for what we're doing and hope that we can connect to the right people to continue to build what we're trying to build.
Yeah, and the second thing I don't want anyone to miss is that you bring your family into the foundation and to the Treasure House, and I think that's so important to build that culture within a family of generosity, because it's hard when you have someone that would be a famous dad that you think, well, I can just live, I can coast on that. And if you have maybe done well and you're listening and you think, I don't want my kids to coast off what maybe I did. I want them to go out and make it influence their community just like I have. I think what you have to do is you have to get them involved with this generosity movement that we talk about in this podcast and in the book, that you want them to be involved in the charities that you feel strongly about until they find their own cause that they want to be the into.
I was just going to say, Andrew, I think the biggest thing is, whatever we do in life, it's about creating a mindset that is focused on that, right? A mindset of excellence, a mindset of hard work, and this idea of generosity. I want to create a mindset of generosity where that's a part of what I think about on a daily basis. And so we felt like with our kids, especially in this day and age, they grew up completely different than we did, right? They grew up with a lot more than we ever had. And so it would have been easy for them to kind of coast and go, oh, well, mom and dad are doing all that great charity work. We don't have to worry about it. We can worry about ourselves. We can focus on ourselves. And so for us, it was so important to go, nope, you were born into this family. I know you didn't choose it, but this is a part of it, is that we're going to build a mindset of generosity and giving and charity in our kids from an early age. So it's something that they consider. As you said, as with everything, right? I can, lead them to church, but at some point they are going to have to develop their own faith. They can't have mom and dad's faith. And the same thing will hold true for the charity work or what they decide to do in life. They're going to have to develop that on their own. But I wanted them to experience it. We talked about the impact that we have and that's on us when we give, right? When we're a part of those programs. And so once you understand it, you're like, I want my kids to feel that. I want my kids to understand that. And I want them to look forward to, even if they can't do it like we can do it right now, I want them to look forward to those kind of opportunities moving forward in life, whatever that looks like. And that's the beautiful thing. It doesn't have to look like creating your own foundation. It can be simply giving of your time for, 30 minutes, once a week doing this or doing that. One of the big things, my wife used to go and hold babies. We had gotten all this notoriety. And so everywhere we went, people would recognize us. And she's like, I don't want that. I don't want to go places and be recognized. Even the charity work sometimes would become more tedious when it became about us as opposed to what we were trying to do. And so, I remember she found this little place and go, I'm just going to go and hold babies because the babies don't know who I am. They don't care who I am. I don't have to give them anything other than just love and give them my time. And, and that, spoke so deeply into her soul. And she believes it spoke so deeply into those, young, boys and girls' soul as she was just holding them and loving on them when, and they were going through some of their struggles. And so that's just what we're trying to do, is we're trying to build a mindset of charity and generosity and getting our eyes off of ourselves. And so we felt it was so important, to make sure that we brought our kids along the way.
I love it. There's some closing questions I like to ask from time to time. What are some common misconceptions people have about you, Kurt, or maybe even the causes you support? You can go either way with it.
I don't know. I mean, I think people, unfortunately, not everybody's going to get to know everything about me being in the public eye, right? I mean, there's times that they're going to find out a lot of things about me. But, I don't know what the one misconception is. I think when I was playing, one of the misconceptions was about my faith, and that, I remember people telling me that they thought when I, walked into the locker room for the first time that I was going to have a Bible in my hand and I was going to jump up on a stool and just start preaching a message out of the Bible because, I was outspoken about my faith, and well, that's what he's going to be. That's what we're going to get, and everybody was like, oh my gosh. And, they came to realize that I'm just a real person that believes in certain things and loves, Jesus the way that I do, but a person that can have a conversation, and a person that can talk about anything, and a person that's as real as they come, even though we may be a little bit different in a belief that we had. And, so that was, I think, one of the misconceptions that people had, that if you were a Christian, every word out of your mouth had to be something, from Scripture, as opposed to go, no. This is a regular person like you that struggles with different things just like you, that has been through different things just like you. He just happens to have found a faith and a belief in something that, that light that he walks towards every day, but it doesn't, you can't put it in a box. It can look a lot of different ways and be represented a lot of different ways. And that was, I think, one misconception about me and about my faith, and that, that has been fun to watch as I've gone along, and people have been able to see that there's different ways to do this thing. There's different ways to walk out your faith.
Well, I mean, I think that's the Christian life. I mean, if we go full circle with what would Jesus do, Jesus went and lived among everybody, and so did his disciples, and so did Paul. They went into their communities, and they were salt and light, and they had gospel conversations with they were just standing up on the table with a book in the hand yelling judgment. They weren't just subscribing to a Sunday service for 1 hour and lived their life completely like everyone else for 7 days. No, they went out, but Jesus was always on their lips. He was always talking about how their testimony, they were one way and then they were another way once they encountered Jesus. And that's what we have to do in our daily life. And you're doing great work even after your career, and I'm very appreciative of your work. One more time, do you mind giving a shout out to the Treasure House one more time for everyone listening?
Yep. So Treasure House, go to treasurehouse.org. So it's a community living facility for young adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities, a chance to be able to live as independently as possible, to have a community, to grow. And, we've always said this. We have 7 kids. And so for a long time, it was so easy to dream for 6 of our kids, right? Zach had his disability, so we really, didn't know from a day-to-day basis, okay, what that was going to look like. But for all of our other kids, oh, he can be the football star, and she can be the president of the United States, and he can be a lawyer, a doctor, or a teacher, whatever. There was no limitations on what we could dream for our other kids. And for Zach, it was so limited because we didn't know. We didn't know what was out there. We didn't know what the possibilities were. And that has been a big part of what Treasure House is we want every family to be able to dream big for every one of their children, no matter what their abilities or disabilities. We say it all the time. We've got 7 kids and all of them have disabilities. but all of them have incredible abilities too. And our goal is to focus on the abilities. That's what Treasure House does, is focuses on the abilities of these young men and women and helps them and helps their families to dream bigger and dream the way that I believe every parent and every family should be able to dream.
That is so special. I'm so thankful you shared about this opportunity for people to give to. And just thank you for coming on the show.
You got it, man. Thanks for having me. I love the platforms. I love what you're doing. You know, as we've said, there's so many different great podcasts or platforms out there that people are using in different ways. And I love to be a part of all the different ones and see all the great work that you're doing and the lives that you're impacting. So I appreciate you letting me be a little part of it.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming on. Well, that's all we have for this episode of the Rich, Young, and Powerful podcast. One thing that would really help us both and other new potential listeners is for you to rate our show on iTunes and Spotify. And also check out my new book, the book you can find on richyoungpowerful.com/book, The Giving Crisis. And also check out our channel, The Everyday Philanthropist, to get your questions answered on philanthropy, giving, and stewardship. Until next time, remember that when a giver gives more, they receive and become more. See you next time.